so just a tiny bit more detail about me. So yes, I started off as a market research innovator. Has anyone heard of Millward Brown brand tracking? Yep. Yeah, and link testing still? Yeah. What about brand Z, brand equity? Yeah, a lot of nods. Okay, good. Those are my kind of claims to fame. So I was involved heavily in the development of all of those, very much behind the scenes. So I was very much a corporate guy at Kantar, doing lots of hopefully quite clever and inventive things, but you wouldn't have heard of me until the last few years, where I evolved my career. So after being at Millward Brown and then Kantar, I became also a CMO. So I became a marketing professional and eventually a CMO for 5 years. So I realised all the things I should have told myself, told marketing when I was a market research, and all the things I shouldn't have said, but too late. And in recent times, I've evolved into. I've taken what was a passion, a hobby, which is illustrating things to help explain marketing concepts, into what eventually became the 4 books that Laura mentioned. And these books have done quite well, and that's the reason that I got in touch with, Catherine and Laura got in touch with me, because they came across my books and my LinkedIn illustrations, and we talked, and we're working on plenty of things, and that's why I'm here today. So that's the sort of overall story. So that's why I'm here today. Why are you here today? I wasn't really expecting an answer, no? Well, I'm hoping that you'll get at least these things from this session, fingers crossed. So a lot of you have laughed at least once, so I can almost take that one off. I hope you'll be inspired by something that you see, or an idea, or a metaphor, or an image. And if you want to steal any of the illustrations you see, you can. I'll give you my website at the end, which has all of them. We hope that you'll be interested in the course that Laura referred to that we're working on, that you might be able to take next year. And feel pleased, obviously, that you've come along today. So that's my goal. And in terms of content, here are the 4 topics that I'd like to share with you today. And it's a bit like a little taster of the training that we're planning. So the first is, what is the case for advertising investment in the first place? What kind of arguments can you give to your business, to your CFO, as to why this is important and worth doing? The next one is a useful framework for thinking about how does advertising actually work. And the more we have a good way of thinking about how advertising works, the better we are at making decisions about how to maximize it. Then we'll talk specifically about media selection and combination, so the media planning and the role of TV within that. And then finally, if we have time, I've got a sort of bonus section, which is talking about effective video creative and how that varies between different types of channels. Sound okay? Okay, good. So the case for investing in advertising. Advertising has always been central to success of any business. Let's take a look at this ad, see what you think of this one. It is, in fact, the first ever recorded ad, according to most historians. My son actually got a PhD in history. He checked this out for me, and he believes it's kosher. So it's the first ad, and it was by a fabric seller in Thebes, in Egypt, around 3000 BC. And it's a flyer made on papyrus, as you would, back in ancient Egypt, that was put around all around Thebes, and that's why they still found some copies of it after all this time. And basically it says, "I've lost my slave, so if anyone can help track down and bring back my slave, please come to my shop and I will give you a gold coin." Yeah, great, perfect. But then if you read on, he starts to talk about, when you come to the shop, might be a good opportunity to sample some of my wares. And he talks about where you can see the most beautiful canvases in all of Thebes, which are woven according to everyone's tastes. So we don't know whether or not this so-called slave ever was found, but I'm sure you can agree this is marketing, this is advertising at its best. Something interesting, something you might even talk about but then actually it's an advert in disguise. Brilliant, like all good ads. So advertising has always been at a cornerstone of marketing. It's at the heart of the promotion, one of the 4 Ps of marketing. And whether you call them the 4 Ps, the 5 Ps, the 6 Ps, the 7 Ps of marketing, advertising has a role, however you think about it. And there's a really good reason for that, and that's simply because it has proven time and time again to give a good return on your investment. There's a fabulous analysis here. Just checking that's moved on. Okay. Yeah, it's moved on here, but not on the main screen, so I'll just try that again. Yeah, so the screens aren't catching up with the change on here. It's just caught up, brilliant. Okay, cool. So this is an analysis by the World Advertising Research Centre and that have looked across categories and across brands to analyse the return from advertising investment. And on average, they found that $1,000, 100,000, doesn't really matter, the ratios are the same, $100,000 invested in advertising on average will give a return of over $200,000. Now, it's more complex than that. There are huge factors that determine the kind of ROI you can expect. The biggest one being just how big and established and how valuable your brand is and how profitable it is. And also the creative quality of your content. But as you can see, on average, it gives a good return. And I think one of the best illustrations of the value of advertising is look to see what happens to brands that stop. What happens to brands that stop advertising? This is a recent analysis from Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and it shows that typically, if a brand stops advertising, within 5 years, its sales, on average, will halve. And this is brands, when you look at amongst brands that were stable beforehand. So stable and advertising, stop advertising, half within 5 years. And one of the reasons for that is because, obviously, most markets are competitive. Most brands advertise. You cannot afford not to advertise in those markets, otherwise you'll lose your sales and your share. But how much? How much to spend? No one has come up with a perfect formula for how much to spend, but we know there's a rule of thumb, and there's two things to consider. The first thing is, of course, how much are your competitors spending? So to be competitive, you need to kind of roughly match in terms of your share of market to be similar to your share of spend. But in the absence of that information, a good rule of thumb is to spend about between, say, 5 and 10% of your total gross revenues on advertising. Now, it's not a perfect figure, but I've been asked this question so many times, I thought, well, this is a place to start. We know that if you spend more than 10%, you can still get a really strong return, but there will come a point where if you spend too much more, the return will dip below the 0 point. And finding where that is quite difficult. But 5%, 10%, 15% seems like a good rule of thumb. And that's but more for established brands. For new brands, you can spend much higher than that to get the brand off the ground and give yourself a good return in the long run. Okay, so that's the case for advertising. Moving on to let's start to think about how advertising actually works. You'll have come across lots of frameworks for this already. There's top of funnel, bottom of funnel. There's physical availability and mental availability. They all have connections with each other. When you read marketing academic papers, the most common way of phrasing these concepts is typically that advertising has a brand building effect and a purchase activation effect. Okay, so I'm sure I'll do this quite quickly, assuming most of you got this kind of background. But brand building is all about making a brand highly memorable and easy to recognise when people are thinking about the category, thinking about buying the category. So it comes to mind straight away when people are thinking about a need or want to buy the category. And then purchase activation is reminding people about the brand and actually triggering them to buy that brand at exactly the right times and places when they're actually buying. So the differences are, they're connected, and hopefully you can see how the two work together. Now, they actually work extremely well together, as this next slide shows. Now, is there anyone here who's into soccer? Oh, I saw a hand up right at the back. Can you help out here? Who do you support? Please don't swear. We're live. Yeah. Okay. Can you think of an example? It doesn't have to be from your team or not. Of a midfielder who is brilliant. Oh, that was quick. And a striker who benefits from that brilliance in the same team. Okay. There you go. Okay. So the idea is, in a good team, you have at least one superb midfielder who doesn't necessarily score lots of goals themselves, but they assist all the time. They get the ball sorry, that's me playing football. Okay. They get the ball in the ballpark of the goal. They get it towards the goal, and then they have the striker who work in tandem in the right place at the right time to put it away and make the sale. I can't think of a more, that's an analogy that stood me in good stead, but just an example, I was going to refer to David Beckham and probably Michael Owen. So, yeah.
It's a hockey towel.
Yeah, no, I nearly changed this. I know. Last minute, I suddenly thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why didn't I ask about something?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No. But the trouble is, I don't know whether hockey's the same and you still have midfielders and...
Is it different sport?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I imagine that there are midfield equivalent. I'm not going to get it. We'll talk afterwards. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so let's focus on each of those two, but both are important. So, brand building. Brand building is so that the brand springs to mind when people are buying the category. Springs to mind when people have a need or a desire and are thinking about buying the category. Now, you think, well, so what? Just coming to mind. This is really important. We make most of our daily decisions based on what comes to our mind. The first thing that comes into our mind. We have to. We can't think through everything. We don't have the time and the mental resources to do it. We'd be incapacitated. So we rely on the first thing that comes to mind is probably right. So it's a massive bias, even for huge, important purchases. So even if we later do some thinking through, it's already biasing us. So this idea of mental availability, which is another way of thinking about this, it's fundamentally important, and it's one of the primary goals of advertising. Now, there are some brands that are brilliant at doing this. Here's one of my favourites. This is Coke. Coke has managed to get itself to be thought of by a lot of people for a lot of different needs and occasions. Not just once, not just a summer drink or a drink for a certain occasion or two. It's for all of these different things. But the reason for that is they've consciously tried to build that, and advertising has played a key role over the years. Now, I love these. This took me a long time. I had to draw each one individually and then string them down. But I love doing it because it just illustrates. They've picked. They must have come up with a whole list of what are also called category entry points, and said, right, we're going to win on thirst and taste and refreshment. Yeah, fine. We're going to talk about tiredness. That's important. We actually originally did have cocaine in it, and it did wake you up. That's for sure. We're going to talk about using Coke to Excuse me. We're going to talk about using Coke to entertain people. We're going to talk about different times of the year. We're going to talk about Christmas. We're talk about Thanksgiving and 4th of July. So they've built these up and then they reinforce them. And that's how it works. Now, but how do those associations actually get forged? How does advertising do this? Has anyone heard of Pavlov's dogs? Anyone prepared to talk us through roughly what the Pavlov's dog experiment was all about? Thank you. What do you remember?
Right. It's when someone feeds a dog and then rings a bell every time the dog is fed, and then the dog develops this reflex. So when the next time the ring bells, the dog's saliva starts producing, although there is no food, there might be no food, but the dog is expected to eat, although the ring, but like there's no food but the ring, because of the ring, the bell. So like building these connections, and in the dog's mind, every time the bell rings, there is food.
Perfect. I think we should award a book for that, to be honest. I bought a couple of spares, so yeah, well done. Thank you. Yes, exactly. And that was, and that kind of illustrates that through repetition of two stimuli at the same time, again, consistency, after a while, the two things become linked in the mind. That there are neurons that have been connected between those two ideas, and that neuron has become stronger and stronger and stronger. And that is exactly what happens with advertising. It's when you are experiencing an ad, so long as the brand also is in your mind at that time, and that's a big issue with some advertising, the branding, but that's another whole story. But if the brand is also activated when you're through various mechanisms, like being there, then there is an opportunity to forge those links. And just like with the Pavlov's dogs, the consistency is important. The repetition of the same stimuli, or very similar stimuli in the brand, again and again and again, means you build that connection that lasts for a long, long, long time. Okay? So that's kind of how it works in terms of, it's called classical conditioning, right? So the benefit of this is these connections are built up whenever the brand is brought into people's mind. And that includes, by the way, it's not just the advertising, it's all touch points. It's experience the brand itself. Anytime the brand is present, you have the opportunity to build these connections. And the end result is, like I said, if people think about a need and you've managed to create that strong connection, they'll think of the brand and they'll assume it's right. And if you also bring some nice positive, relevant associations as well come to mind, that'll just seal the deal. And that is what certain channels that are memorable, like TV, cinema, are very good at doing. Okay, cool. Let's just take a couple of minutes to watch some examples of some powerful brand building ads. Okay, one more. Okay, plenty more where they come from. I have now a database of 500 ads to illustrate different examples. So if you never ever need an example to make a point, let me know. I'm happy to send you one. Okay, cool. So now moving on to purchase activation. Again, question for the audience. Has anyone bought a new car fairly recently? Last month or two? Did I see a hand go up there? Tell me, what did you buy? Oh, nice. And tell me, did any of these things occur when you bought your Tesla? When you were thinking about buying your Tesla, did you notice any more car ads?
Yes, I did.
For which brand?
For Tesla.
Ah, interesting. I was hoping you said that. What else did you do? Did you do any of these kind of activities to find out more about the brand, about other brands?
I used to own another one before that, so
Okay.
I was already sold.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's boring then. I need someone else. Who else bought a car that wasn't the same as the brand before? There must be someone. Yes. Tell me. What? Yeah. What?
Kia EV9.
A Kia.
EV9.
Okay. So tell me, does this ring true? Did you start noticing things? Yeah. For the brand. And which of these activities did you do?
Well, not motoring magazine.
No.
But everything else.
Everything else. So, okay, and this was, why did you do that? Why did you look at those other channels?
Primarily research.
Yep. So was it a brand you'd heard of before?
Yeah.
Was it one you were interested in before you started the process?
Yeah. We had kind of narrowed it down.
Yeah, and what other brands did you consider?
Other electric vehicles.
Yep.
So Volkswagen, Kia, Hyundai were the main ones.
So those were the main three before you started, and then you investigated those three, and then you decided to choose the Kia. Just out of interest, because I need a new car, and I want to buy electric. Why did you go for the Kia in the end?
Three rows, have 3 kids, and then they don't fight.
Oh, it's big. It's one of these beasts. It's one of these ones with the 3.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there's not very many in electrics.
Okay. So actually, in that case, they're quite a functional need. Yeah. Okay. Nice one. Thank you, both of you, and apologies. I needed to have the laugh, didn't I, to tick off my little checklist. This is actually quite common. One of the powerful thing about brand building is it gets you on that shortlist, the consideration set. Yeah. So you tend not to look. Most people in any category will just have a certain number of brands that they'll actively consider, and there'll be some that they just reject. So already brand building has upped your your probabilities by a lot. But then during the process, the activation media, the things you only experience really when you're actively thinking about buying that category, and they can be quite different touch points sometimes, those can steer you one way. They can either confirm that Tesla is the right way to go again, or they might, if you're open to 2 or 3, help you choose one, etc. So both are important, but you can see how they're playing quite a different role. Thank you. So this does mean that for good purchase activation, you need to understand that journey. You need to understand those touch points that people use when they are exploring, when they're actually making a decision about what to buy. Now, there are lots of frameworks for this, but this one is my favourite. It's called the Hankins Hexagon. Has anyone come across this? It's quite new. Yeah, you have? A few hands up? Yeah. It's by media expert James Hankins. And what I like about this one is it shows us it's not a linear journey. It's not actually a funnel that goes, one step left to right. It's more complex, and it's more varied, and it's different for different people, and the same person on different occasions, etc. So this is how it works. Everyone starts here, as in they spend most of their time not really needing the category. Even when it comes to, baked beans, there's a time when you've got some baked beans in the cupboard and you don't need any baked beans and you're not really looking for them. Same with cars. If you've got a brand new car, hopefully you won't need one for at least 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Fingers crossed. Although I've heard Teslas can be less reliable than people think. You better take that out of the video because that's dodgy. Right. Yes, and in fact, people spend, on average, for a typical category, like 90%, 95% of the time, not currently needing to buy. And actually, that's where brand building is hopefully building up biases, building up favourable mental availability for your brand. Now, but then what happens is people can zip all around this or whatever. So here are 4 examples. The simplest is probably in the baked bean example, which is you were in a happy position of having baked beans, then you suddenly finished your last can of baked beans, and that triggers the need to buy more. So you go to the shop, and, you might just buy the same brand as you did last time. because you don't really care, or you do care. Either way, you just buy it and then you experience it. That's a really simple journey. Then you have, occasionally, for even the same category, a slightly different one, where you are, again, you've run out of baked beans, so you're triggered to buy, but for some reason, you compare different brands of baked beans. It could be because something caught your eye, a new brand. Cross and Blackwell is the new brand in the UK that's launched. Anyway, not interesting, but true. And you might just be curious about it and want to give it a try. Or it might be that your brand that you bought last time, and the time before, isn't available. That's a disaster, because you are triggered and you go, oh, I'll try this other one. And the other one's usually quite good, and you'll lose, you've lost a customer. So, yes, or price, of course, price promotion. You happen to notice some really good deal on a different brand, so you say, well, you know what, this looks quite good, I'll try that. So that's common. With cars, I mean, we've just talked about the car example. It's quite common to need a new car because your old car's, stopped working. Then, I can't read my own notes here. Oh, you then like we talked about earlier, where you explore different possibilities and then you compare them. You might have a little spreadsheet and put in pros and cons of more. And then you might do a test drive. So in this case, you're experiencing the product before you buy rather than just after you buy, and then you make the purchase. Now, there's one more. It's quite rare, but occasionally you still got some baked beans, right, in the cupboard. But I wish I'd chosen a more interesting category now, but anyway, you still got some baked beans in the cupboard. But you're in the supermarket and they gave you a little trial and it's a little trial of a new brand, and it was the best baked bean you've ever tasted. And you go, you know what? I can afford this. I'm going to buy these new delicious baked beans and have them, even though I've still got some baked beans back in the cupboard. Okay, hopefully the principle is clear. So the advantage of great purchase activation advertising is that it reminds people of the brand at the perfect time and place, regardless. And so it's really important to know those different touch points and journeys, because that's where your activation advertising should be placed. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples. The first one is not a video. It's a poster ad. And it's a good example of time and place. So imagine, this is used when Uber was first launched, and it was around subway stations. So imagine you had a long, hard day, and you're just about to go down, and you're about to enter the subway, and you know what's in store, don't you? It's going to be very hot. It's going to be sweaty. It's going to be cramped and crowded. You're going to have to wait on the platform because you're not even going to get on the first train or even the second train. And that moment is a good moment to remind people that Uber is an alternative to this, where you can quite quickly order an Uber and sit in a nice air-conditioned taxi, also for several hours because obviously the traffic's awful. But it's the alternative, and that's the time and place, and that's how and when activation works. But of course, activation can be, any media has the opportunity to do this. Here's a short video for KitKat, which does a lot of brand building, especially around the break idea, but it also activates using videos in various places.
Have a break. Have a KitKat.
Yeah, and it's one of the advantages of having a distinctive brand asset, like a famous slogan and an idea like, have a break, have a KitKat, because you can use it as a shorthand in your activation advertising to remind people. Cool. Okay, so third section. This is about choosing the right mix of channels and how TV can play a role in that mix. The best advice to start with is that you should always make sure your advertising spans both brand building and purchase activation. Like I said, the two go together, like the two types of players in hockey and and other sports. And Binet and Field have done some wonderful work proving that. And they found that the best return you can get from your total advertising budget, on average, is if you put 60% behind advertising designed to build the brand and 40% beside advertising designed to activate. They've built further on this just last summer, concluding that if you're a very established brand, you should be spending even more on brand building, a bigger proportion. And if you're a younger brand, a smaller brand, less established, you should be spending a higher proportion on purchase activation. And I've got some data on that on my website. But it's useful to know you need a mix. But which actual channels? That is a much harder decision because, of course, you've got all of these channels and then all the sub-formats within all of these channels to consider. And although I've plotted them here to indicate what, I guess, a lot of people in the industry believe are the strengths of certain channels in terms of being better at brand building or purchase activation, the truth is all channels can be used, and it's more how and where you use them. So please bear that in mind. But I have got a framework here that is, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's used within the media agency or versions of it, but I find it very useful when I'm talking through media planning principles to help you narrow it down. So the first thing is the cost per exposure will always be a relevant variable because we have a certain fixed budget. So think about the cost per exposure of different channels and the reach amongst potential buyers. Reach is fundamentally important to advertising effectiveness. I can bore you for hours later if you want, in the drinks thing about why that's the case. But also you need to consider the attention achieved. Laura shared earlier some subjective data on the differences, and I've got some and also some objective data from Karen Nesselfield. I've got some further data like the Karen Nesselfield data. Also relevant to your choice is whether the channel will be experienced when people are in the right mindset for the message and the brand, and also whether it's suitable for the brand. You don't see Gucci in sort of scruffy, horrible outdoor sites under railway arches very often. Now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to talk about the first three sort of now in this session, but there's more planned in the training. So in this example, you can combine the reach and the cost of, say, 4 channels, A, B, C, and D. And in this scenario, channel D looks like a very good choice because for a reasonable cost, it achieves a very high reach amongst your target audience. That's a good start point. And then out of B and C, B looks like much better value because it reaches almost the same, has potential to reach the same number of your target audience, but at a much lower cost per exposure. So B and D look like two potentials. A, probably not. I mean, it looks good value because it's above the line, right? Good reach, low cost. But it's so small, it might not be worth putting the time and energy and management time into something that has such low reach. So that principle's good, but we can't stop there because not all exposures are equal. So you can't just look at the cost. Have a think in your head, what percentage of all ad views across all media types would you get, this is from Karen Nesselfield, by the way, would you guess last for more than 2.5 seconds? So just 2.5 seconds. In your head, what proportion of ad views last for at least 2.5 seconds? Okay, yeah, got some figures. What was that?
Oh, he said 10, I said 20.
What else have we got? Oh, you're too good. I was hoping for at least people saying 20, 30. I was going to start the opening bidding at 50. No one's going there now. Yeah, the figure that is it's 15, so you're all pretty close. Yeah, nice one. Yeah, it's 15, so only 15% lasts more than 2.5 seconds. So it's actually quite rare to get an exposure of more than just that length of time. And it's really important because the longer the dwell time, the longer people spend looking at an ad, the bigger its effect. This has been proven in many different ways, including this data about the impact on brand choice. So it's a nice sort of summary metric. You can see here that the difference between a 1-second dwell time and a 5 per second dwell time, it's nearly double the uplift. So it's worth getting those extra seconds. And it continues to go up. If you can get people to watch for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, it gets extremely high. And different channels vary massively. I mean, of the video channels, cinema is the king of this. It's just the reach is so much lower. But TV and various versions of TV, this was done a few years ago, where BVOD was the definition, but people keep changing the definitions, but you know the kind of channel we mean. They are much, much better at commanding attention than channels like social media, in-feed. Those are more like akin to print and outdoor. And digital display usually comes out the bottom. So when you factor in the cost, you get a very different picture, as I'm sure you can imagine, where TV and especially the non-skippable YouTube channels tend to do well in these analyses, whereas Facebook and Instagram tend to do worse, and online banners and displays do very, very badly. So this is, modern media planning has to factor in this difference in engagement and attention levels. Okay, what about combining channels? You may have come up with a set of channels that you think could be useful for the brands. They've ticked a lot of the boxes, but how do you kind of put them together in an effective media plan? Well, this is a framework that's gaining fairly well accepted, I would say, and starting to be used more by a lot of media planners, which is you should start off with a channel that reaches a high proportion of your audience. Yeah, so go for high reach. If there is a channel that can reach a high proportion of your audience, use that as kind of your backbone for the campaign. But then no one channel can reach all the people for most brands, all the people you want to reach. So you'll need to complement that with other channels that are particularly good at reaching particular segments or demographics. Okay? Makes a lot of sense, obviously. But I think the nice build to this is that we know we also need a good mix of brand building and purchase activation. So if we can make the big, high-reach media also good at brand building, that's perfect, because it'll reach pretty much everyone, or at least a good proportion of everyone. It'll set up those mental associations that can make other media more effective. And then we can allow the other more complementary media that are more targeted at other groups to do the purchase activation. So you've got that, again, that combination, what's a hockey midfielder called? Midfielder, that's a bit of luck. And what's a hockey striker called? Winger.
That's true.
Oh? What's not true? The name of...
I would say that they kind of do it all.
In hockey?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, it's a bad analogy. I knew it. Go back to soccer. I'm comfortable there. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I'm mixing up my metaphors now. I can't remember what we're doing. We need to move on entirely. No. All right, okay, cool. Okay, so it's that combining the idea of reach and then additional segment reach through other channels with the idea of brand building and activation. That is where some magic can really happen. Cool. And you won't be surprised to hear that I feel that TV is, of course, well, it is because it is a really strong contender for the backbone for a lot of campaigns. Because, as we saw earlier, it still has extremely high reach compared with most channels. So the way to read it, this is an analysis done by ThinkBox, which I really like. And the way to read this is if you look at TV and the sort of row across there, that means that the figures in that row are when you have TV, how much more effective the other channels are, and and the equivalent. So I can't read the specific figures very easily here, but for example, here it is. TV makes online display 31% more effective. It makes direct mail 20% more effective, etc. And you have the equivalent figures for other types of media, and you can see that it's only really TV that has this significant halo effect. And again, I can discuss reasons why I believe that is the case, but it's to do with its brand building power and memorability in particular, and its ability to establish distinctive brand assets, etc. Good. Okay, so that's the media sort of planning side of things, which means we do have time and I'll just get a quick drink of my water, to talk about tips for a creative, effective video. So this is more about the creative side, really, rather than the playing side. Now, when you think about it, the first tip is you need to produce different films, different video for long duration, long attention channels and short duration channels. You have to. You absolutely have to. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense from what we've been saying. So this is a classic engagement pattern for an effective, say, TV advert, where you've got several seconds, maybe 3, 5 at the beginning, to draw people in. And you've got the advantage of audio and visual to draw people in. And you can build that and build as the engagement to a peak. And at the peak, you might often reveal the brand, it saves the day, it's the hero. And then you talk about the brand's offer and why it saves the day, where you lose a bit of interest, but then you do a reprise and remind people of it at the end. It works well. It's a classic formula that works really well. And actually, sound and music play a really, really big role in that, because I love this phrase that one of my old bosses told me, which is, you probably heard it anyway, but you can close your eyes, but you can't close your ears. You know, you can look away from the telly, but you will still hear it if some interesting sound or music draws you back. So you've got an opportunity to use sound and vision early on to draw people in and then tell them a fantastic story. Also, this is the other benefits are it can also increase comprehension, so you can cue meanings and people understand it more easily and better. It can create mood, as you know, and act as a mnemonic, distinctive brand asset. And that's one of the reasons that you have to do something different for some channels like Facebook and Instagram in particular, because the majority of views of video on those channels have the sound off. This does vary, we think, by format. So this is more in-feed Facebook, and TikTok's better. So Reels might be better because that hasn't been updated since. Anyway, but even so, a lot of social media advertising has the sound off, so you can't use that. And of course, back to that 2.5 second figure we talked about earlier, and the fact that a lot of social channels, the average duration that people watch those video ads is 1.5 seconds, 1.7 I think it is. And that's an average, which means that a lot of people are flicking straight past the videos or swiping past them very fast, like less than half a second. So you've got more like half a second to grab people, and you've got to do it with visuals only in some cases, in many cases. So you can imagine, how can the same video do both? It can't. In fact, I want to redraw this, because what I've tried to capture here is the shape that you need for the short duration media, but it's even steeper than I've drawn it, is what I'm trying to say, the initial uplift. It actually has to be even quicker than that from what I've seen recently. Okay, so that's the bad news. The good news is that the key principles, the things you need to do to engage people, to hold them and create emotions and make them remember the advertising in the brand are pretty much the same as far as we know. And this is a nice analysis from, this is Orlando Wood, who works with System 1 mainly. And he did a fantastic analysis identifying the characteristics that are both emotionally engaging and are good at holding attention, which are coloured in red here. And if you have a quick read about some of the characteristics here, they're basically very human things. They're about humans, they're about human interactions, they're about relatable storytelling. Those are the things that still work best in terms of powerful advertising, and not things like abstractions and strange sort of sound effects or lots of words and facts. Okay, so that's my very, very quick summary to media planning, with a little bonus about advertising effectiveness. So I'm just going to wrap up. Yep, good, I'm about on time. To say, well, I think we did manage to cover the 4 topics, so thank you. And well, it's over to you really to tell me whether or not. Yep, here are the 4 topics. And then finally, how did I do? I had at least more than one laugh, so I'm really happy with that. Hopefully you were inspired by at least 1 or 2 ideas or concepts. Or again, steal as many visuals as you like. I'll point in the direction for more. Hopefully you're interested in the course. And, well, I'm pleased that I came to the event today. I'm hoping you're feeling the same. So just a quick follow-up. That's my website, smartmarketing.me. That's where you can find all the illustrations. There are now 370 covering all the topics shown here. Oh, someone was going to take a picture of the website, so I'm going to. That's a good idea. I'll just get a drink. I'll drink then. Okay, brilliant. So lots of topics, mainly around marketing, business, and a lot on advertising and brand building. And if you want to see more, I usually draw about 1 or 2 illustrations each week or fortnight. And I'm on LinkedIn, Marketing Illustrated.